Canterbury Trails Farm. Today we are in the kitchen canning spiced apple rings. We're going to be water bath canning these apple rings because they are a high acid fruit. So they are easily water bath canned. I've already sliced and cored my apples. You can use any kind of apples. The firmer the better because they just slice easier. And they'll also stay firmer in your jars. I have a mixture of some yellow apples and some I think there might be a Granny Smith in there. Just what I had. I had 5 pounds. So you want about 5 pounds of apples. So I'm going to tell you the ingredients. I'll also post these in the underneath the video as well. So you'll need 5 pounds of apples. You'll need 4 cups of sugar. You'll need 5 cups of water, and you'll need 2 cups of the red hot candies, or some people call them Imperials. But there's a little red cinnamon candies that everybody's grandmas always had in little dishes on their coffee tables. So you'll need those. You'll also need some lemon juice and water to keep your sliced apples in, to keep them from getting brown. They oxidize really fast once they hit the air once you slice them. So you just want to keep them in the lemon juice just to keep them so they don't just turn brown. If they're brown, they'll still taste alright, and the red candies will color your water, so it really won't be noticeable. But we like to start out with high quality of a product as possible. So currently I have my 5 cups of water. It's coming to a boil really on the burner. And as soon as I see some bubbles, I'm going to add my sugar. I have my jars sterilizing. I'm going to try to use wide mouth jars for this. I like to try to keep my rings intact, my apple rings intact. But I also have apple pieces because I don't want to waste any apples. So I'll use my wide mouth jars to try to get as many rings intact as possible. I have my rings ready over here. I have my lids simmering in hot water ready to go onto my jars. I have a clean dish towel that I'm going to use to wipe off my rims. I have my jar lifter, my lid lifter, and my canning funnel. So I'm going to go ahead and turn up my burner and get this water boiling, and we're going to be adding our sugar. So we're going to be needing 4 cups of sugar to make this syrup. My canister a little full here. To keep stirring your water because sugar can scorch pretty quickly. So I'm just going to stir my sugar into my water for about 5 minutes. Use a apple corer, C-O-R-E-R, corer, and peeler. You don't want to peel these though. You can if you want, but usually you leave the peels on the apple. So if you have like a Pampered Chef or an apple corer from Layman's, there's usually a little lever that you can pull the peeler part back and it'll click, and then it won't peel your apples. It'll just core and spiral slice them. So I did that with some of my apples. Some of my apples didn't want to cooperate, so I had to cut them by hand. If you do the spirals, you can leave them in one big spiral, or you can just cut down the middle and it'll cut the rings. As soon as my timer goes off for the 5 minutes, and I've done my full 5 minutes, I'm going to add 2 cups of Red Hot. So I'm going to go ahead and get one of those cups ready. Dissolve down, and they'll be giving they'll give the syrup a nice pinkish red tint, and they'll also color your apples a little bit to a pinkish red. Just look really pretty. Okay, my water is almost ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and add one of my cups of Red Hot. Another cups of Red Hot. I've got my 5 cups of water, my 4 cups of sugar, my 2 cups of Red Hots, and they are all dissolving. putting my apple rings into my syrup. When you get your apple rings in here, you're going to want to simmer your apple rings for 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes if you've cut them thin, or if you're using pieces, you can get away with 10 to 15 minutes. It doesn't matter because they're going to cook more in the jar too while you're actually processing them. So, but you want to get them nice and hot, and you want that syrup to really start, penetrating the apple and pushing them under your syrup. You can see that I have some rings that are small and some that are larger. So right now I'm just picking through, trying to get all the ones that are mostly the same size. And it doesn't really matter, it's just that for putting them in these jars, I'm starting, like I said, I'm going to start with my wide mouth jars. When you're canning and you feel like you're running out of syrup, because we're going to put these in our jars and then we're going to fill them with syrup. We're going to cover them with syrup up to a ½ inch headspace. And that's if you don't know what headspace is, that's where the threads on the top of the jar. It's about the top of your index finger for most people. And we want about half of that, a ½ inch. If you want to get really precise, you can actually use a ruler. Okay, I got most of my apple rings in here. I'm going to let it simmer for my 15 minutes, and then we will come back and we will start putting things in jars. Apples are done simmering in the syrup. And I'm going to take out my sterilized jars now. I also need to mention that I always keep a kettle of boiling water going. I bring it to a boil and then I keep it simmering. That way, if my water level drops when I'm water bath canning, I have boiling water ready to add to the canner, and it doesn't change the temperature. About 2 to 3 inches over your jars. It's okay if it's more. I usually put a little more, so that way if it starts boiling down, I'm safe. The water is still boiling, that's good. So I'm going to try to layer my apple rings. Sometimes this doesn't work as well as you want it to. Just lay them in there. You don't really need your funnel until you start pouring the syrup. You're able to pack more in that way. Just want to layer them in your jars. Since I don't really want these to cool off too much, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do about layer 2 jars at a time, pour the syrup in, and then go ahead and set them in my canner with the lid off. Ready there, I'm going to go ahead and pour my syrup over and set them down in my canner just because I don't want these cooling off. My clean dish towel, I'm just going to dip it in my boiling water there. Go around the top. It's my simmered lids. Ring. Set that down there. You want to wipe off the tops, since you don't want anything to be between your seal, like little bits of food or a little bit of sugar, anything that gets between the seal, prevent it from sealing. Putting these down in my canner, I want to start working fast because I don't want these sitting in the water really any longer than they need to be because we're going to be processing them as well. It's on what's called fingertip tight. That means don't just crank it like it's, you want it to be able to form a vacuum, and for it to be able to form a vacuum, air is going to have to get out. So that is why you want to leave some headspace, and you don't want to crank down on your lids. Okay, need 2 more jars. I've got my jars in the canner. I'm going to turn it on up. So you want to process this for 15 minutes for pints and 20 minutes for quarts. Since I'm dealing with all pints, I'm going to be processing mine for 15 minutes. When do you start counting? Wait for your canner to come to a rolling boil. That means you can't blow it down, you can't stir it down, you can't do anything to stop it boiling. As soon as it comes to a rolling boiling, you put your timer on. You look into the canner real quick. So there's my jars. It'll be boiling in just a few minutes here. And we are done. Here are our wonderful spiced apple rings and our 1 jar of apple syrup. And they are out of the canner. And they are waiting to cool down on my countertop. One has popped. One popped as soon as I took it out. And I'm going to just leave them there. I'd like to say my day in the kitchen was done, but I still have some tomatoes to can. So this has been Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm, and I hope you enjoyed this delicious spiced apple ring recipe in water bath canning, and I will put the ingredients down below. And if you like this video, please subscribe and tell your friends. Thank you. Bye.